Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to another edition of Soul Inspiration by Annadale Center. Today we have the pleasure of meeting our very own Udeme Umana. We want to say a big thank you for letting us come into your personal space.
Absolutely.
We're in your house, we're in your closet. Obviously, you know, I know you value privacy, so we appreciate you doing this today, man.
It's all good.
How you doing? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm alive. I'm well.
Amen to that.
Family's well.
Yep.
We're healthy, so we thank God, man. It's been good. It's crazy, man. It's almost April. It's amazing how fast the year's running, man. Absolutely. But we're off to the races, man. Everything's good.
That's such a blessing, man. You being a man of God, I know, you know, God has inspired you to where you are today. But me being a foot and ankle guy, I'm looking down at people's feet, so I usually like to break the ice and talk a little bit about, people's shoe collections. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about all this beautifulnist we see in the background over here. I know you're a humble man, so let's talk a little bit about your shoe collection. What would you say are the oldest pair of shoes you have in this closet?
Yeah, well, first I have to say, man, I don't know if I'm a humble man. Humbleness doesn't recognize itself.
This is humility. Yes.
But I will say this: if you want to call it a shoe collection, folks really have shoe collections.
True
north of 200-300. But I like to have a variation of shoes. Okay. Obviously, on the left-hand side, a majority of the shoes there are primarily like church shoes, and shoes that you go out. Post-COVID, they just don't get much play. So it's pretty much a new dust shoe collection, a little bit.
Different world.
Yeah, but all sentimental. And then obviously on the right are the shoes that I wear quite often, a little bit more casual wear.
Yep, or the athletic shoes on this side.
Exactly.
All right, so let's pull out the oldest pair you got, man, and tell us a little bit about this story. Why you still get this pair of shoes in your closet?
Oldest pair I have. So, I give away a lot of shoes. Yep. So the oldest pair may be like within 3 or 4 years. Makes sense. It may not technically be an old shoe.
Yeah, but you're not a hoarder, I can tell.
Yeah, no, not a hoarder.
Yep.
If there's a need, I try to find a way to fill it. And so sometimes there's some shoes that people like and they say, hey, man, you can have them. But this is probably the oldest pair of shoes. Okay. These are, I got to read them.
Yeah, please read them, man.
You're an ortho guy too, and they got a little ortho in there. These are Yeezy Ortho Lights.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
How old would you say these are?
Gosh.
Couple of years, would you say?
I can't remember when Yeezy first came out in the shoe game. Obviously, it's north of 5-6 years.
True that. So these are one of the originals then.
Yeah, but yeah, it wasn't the ones initially wanted. I told my wife I wanted, I think, the Yeezy Boost.
Okay.
She got me these joints, which are super comfortable, but it's got a space boot look.
No doubt.
It didn't get much wear from me, but definitely the oldest pair.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. That I have in the collection.
All right, so why do you still have them? I mean, it don't look like you got a lot of wear out of this. So a little sentimental value is it?
Not wifey? Not a little, a lot. Because out of all the shoes I have in here, these are the only pair she bought. Like,
okay.
Yeah, my wife does a lot of amazing things for me.
Shoes ain't one of them.
Shoes are not one of them. Right. She respects what I pick. She doesn't try to figure that out for me.
Makes sense.
But she got these for me. And I know at the time, like, getting Yeezys were not necessarily the easiest thing. And so when she got them, I was kind of like, that's not the ones I actually wanted. Baby, man, the gesture was amazing.
Hey,
so
it's the thought that counts.
It's the thought that counts. And so these will always be in the collection, even if they don't get as much wear as initially I thought. But yeah, these are also the oldest and the most sentimental.
Absolutely. Beautiful. How about shoes you most recently got or somebody most recently got for you? So the newest pair you got in your collection?
I'll say my brother. Okay. And so he semi got these for me. Okay. It was, hey, man, here's a nice little love gift for your birthday.
Wow.
To Gucci. Feel free to get what you want to get. And I was like, you know what? It'd be nice to have some white shoes.
Yes.
So
yes,
I tagged these along with him because him and his wife are both a blessing to me. And I thought it was an unbelievable gesture to do so. So
man,
these have gotten a little bit of wear.
A little bit of play.
But yeah, these are probably the newest shoes I do have in the collection.
Where would you wear that to? What kind of outfit would you throw those on?
A nice party.
Okay.
That's semi-casual. You could wear it to church, you know. This may be an Easter Sunday favorite, you know.
Got you.
Something like that.
Easter coming up.
Yeah, Easter is coming up.
Yep.
So something like that. But normally you find me in flip flops.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
But yeah, more of a casual event.
Okay.
Something probably summertime. Summertime vibe. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's Gucci.
And it's Gucci. Yeah.
Amen to that. How about this pair right here? I mean, they're standing out.
Yeah. So
a little bit about those.
So forgive me. I actually lied because my wife has actually bought me 2 pair.
There you go.
Shoes.
So we're gonna give her a little credit.
Yeah, give her 2 pairs. Yeah. So and this was not a request. This was just a part of of my 40th birthday, and she just surprised me with these pair of shoes.
Wow.
For the sneakerheads out there, these are Alexander McQueen's. Obviously, shoes today have just gotten different.
Different, man.
Back in the day, you just had a decent sole, right? Something like this.
Look at that.
Now the soles are
a lot of shock
2.5, 3 inches. Yep. For a guy like me, I guess it helps.
Dude's wearing heels now, man.
Yeah, exactly. Dudes are wearing heels now.
No doubt.
Can't believe it.
How do they feel though? Are they comfortable?
They feel comfortable, and what I like is that they're multi-faceted. Like they're very versatile.
Yep.
You can wear it with a suit,
or whatever. Yep.
You can wear it with jeans. I haven't tried it with a nice pair of shorts, but I'm sure if you have the right outfit, you can rock it. And so these are really cool. So these have some sentimental value too. I would have to say it kind of coincides with the Yeezys that she's got.
Makes sense.
It's been pretty cool.
And we're going to talk about your faith and your career in a little bit, but I'm guessing you work from home. So typical day, are you mostly in slides? Or what's a typical day for you like?
Mostly in slides. Short sometimes, depending on the weather. I mean, it's Texas weather.
No doubt.
It's a variant. So sometimes you wake up and it feels good. Other days you wake up and you feel like you got to put snow boots on.
Yep.
But yeah, if I feel like I got to be super corporate, I'll just jump in and grab a collar shirt like this. But for the most part, I'll just have a normal t-shirt on, black tee, some shorts on, and just get to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shoe game in the house though. Are you mostly barefoot in the house or mostly slides?
Mostly slides. Okay. I normally got slippers on.
Yep.
Got a 4-year-old, and so I try not to step on anything.
Makes sense.
Even though I shouldn't probably be wearing slides because I wear the slides inside and out.
Oh wow, okay.
But I'm also probably the most, or the biggest, I'll say, clean freak in the house too.
No doubt.
So I have a little bit of leeway of like, hey, if he messes something up, he'll clean it.
He gonna clean it. I can testify to that.
But mainly slides. Makes sense. Yeah.
All right, man. So we're gonna talk a little bit about the shoe game now. So we're gonna transition and talk a little bit about your faith, your journey, and kind of where you are today.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Beautiful. Let's do it. All right, brother. So, we talked a little bit about, your journey a second ago, your walk. I've known you for many years. I know you're a Christian. How would you say your faith has influenced where you are today? A lot of people talk about faith, F-A-T-E. And as Christians, we talk about faith, and we believe that God orders our footsteps. How would you say, your faith has influenced where you are today?
Yeah, it's always a good question. And I pause to answer it because I want to be very thoughtful about how I think about how I respond. I mean, for me, it's been huge. It's everything.
Yes, sir.
Because you really start thinking about like, hey, let me make sure that I'm where my feet are, and where my feet are is in the moment of whatever the situation I'm in. And by that I mean it's like when God has positioned you somewhere. You don't get too caught up about where aspirationally you want to go, right? But more so focused on like, hey, God, you have me here for a reason. So what is the assignment?
Yes.
What's the purpose? And so I want to say this early in my career. I mean, after I played baseball, and I started getting into corporate America around 22, I didn't really start thinking about this in probably till my early 30s. But I started to see like the places I worked as my ministry field.
Absolutely.
And I realized the gift that God had given me is like to inspire, to coach, to provide guidance, to be able to build connections really quickly. And I was like, hey, you can use those for negative things,
right?
Or you can use those things to really draw people closer to God. And so the way my faith has really inspired me is just to say like, hey, God, I understand the gifts you've given me. How do I use it to better serve the kingdom? So how that shows up practically in a lot of cases, it's just like, hey, like building connection, meeting people where they're at, allowing myself to be vulnerable about the opportunities and challenges I've had.
Yes, sir.
And then through those conversations, really showing up and letting them know like, hey, here's what God's done for me in my life. And it's just how my faith has impacted my behaviors, how my faith has impacted the decisions I've made over the course of the years. And hopefully those are things that not only inspire people, but plant seeds for them to obviously accept Christ as their Savior.
Amen to that, man. I've known you, since we were back in the ACF days. We know what ACS. Google it, okay? But you are where you are today, and a lot of people will say, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I'm called to do. I mean, you are an athlete. You have always been very athletic. You played baseball through college. Is that correct? And you're in corporate America now. Did you always want to be in corporate America? Tell us a little bit about how you ended up in corporate America and what your goals were after college.
Yeah. First, the first aspect of your question, the first part of your question, did I want to be in corporate America? Right. It was playing 1B for me.
Okay.
1A was playing the major leagues.
Absolutely.
I knew at a young age, around 8 years old, I had a gift in the game. So I was like, all right, I have to play this game. And the more and more people started seeing me, the more and more they started to say, like, hey, there's something there.
There's something there. Right.
And then my parents being from Nigeria and me being the first person to ever play baseball,
right.
They invested the best way they knew how.
Wow.
Looking back, it's like, man, there's so much more we could have done.
To
optimize the talent.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I thank God for what they did and how they made things work in situations that were not, as optimal
ideal as
like they are today. But yeah, baseball was the first goal. But then secondly, I was like, you know what? If I can't play Major League Baseball, I always would love to be in a corporate boardroom. And I don't know why.
And you knew that from a young age?
I knew it from a young age, probably 11, 12.
Wow.
I got to do like, hey, you know what? Putting on a suit, being in a boardroom, engaging with people, figuring out business deals and strategy, like that seems pretty cool. Wow. So there was some level of attraction there, but it was definitely 1B to playing professional baseball. So I thank God the way things are shaking out. But yeah, that's probably how it was from a priority standpoint.
Yes, sir. I can definitely testify that God orders our footsteps, and you know, you're a true testimony to that. When I first met you, you were in healthcare, how did you go from there to Silicon Valley? I mean, how did that happen?
God. Yeah, I'm letting you all know now. There's no strategy I had. I was literally working at a place called Medical Doctors Associates in Alpharetta, Georgia. Wow. We were doing what we call locum tenens work, which I believe is a Latin word for like part-time. And I was just basically calling people, calling doctors and trying to fill OR needs for orthopedic surgeons. Yes. And the region I had was in the Midwest, and I hated it. I mean, it was 8 hours a day. Frustrating work. And it was just cold calling. Yeah. And I was just like, what am I doing? But I had just graduated. And so I graduated, May, June-ish. I started taking that job, I think, in July. And then I was getting a lot of calls from Major League Scouting Bureau. And they're like, hey, Cincinnati Reds want to work you out tomorrow. You know, different teams were calling week after week. So for the first month or so, in my new job, I was telling folks like, hey, I can't be here tomorrow because I got tryouts for this team. Wow. For the first 2 or 3 weeks, it was cool. By Labor Day,
reality set in.
Yeah, reality set in. And my boss, I'll never forget him. I won't say his name. But he was the VP of marketing. He was like, hey, listen here, Udeme, like, we love the fact that you probably will play Major League Baseball, and the fact that you're actually working out with these teams is pretty cool. But we have a corporation and a business to run, and you have to make a decision. By the time you come back on Labor Day, to either say, hey, I want to pursue my career in Major League Baseball, or you want to be in corporate America and work for this organization. And what preceded that I didn't share was that I had another company reach out to me called Stryker. And they're like, hey, you know, we love to interview you. We like to have folks that come from either the military or sports backgrounds because they kind of fit the profile. There's just a lot of different things they did in terms of like finding the right profiles to fit the mix within their organization. So I was going through that process alongside working for Medical Doctors Associates, alongside doing these baseball tryouts. And I had also went through an interview process with them on the side. Wow. So fast forward the story, I basically decided to come back and let that VP know, like, hey, you know what? I'm going to pursue other things. And so at that day, I got back on Tuesday. I said, hey, you know, today will be my last day. Here's my 2-week notice. He's like, hey, you know what? No need for a 2-week notice. At lunchtime, just gather your stuff. Wow. Don't make it a scene. And just go ahead and go. Best of luck. And I was like, well, can I at least tell my team and folks I work alongside that don't worry, I'll let them know. So that was my introduction. I'm like, oh, this is what corporate America transitions look like. So I left. I got home. My dad was like, you did what? You quit. He's like, well, you have another job? I said, I don't. I interviewed a Stryker a couple weeks ago, but they'll let me know if I get the job or not in a week or two. And he was like, what kind of? And I was like, hey, God. I said, Dad, I prayed about it, and I honestly feel that I'm going to get that job if the baseball stuff doesn't work out. So I'm taking a step of faith on this, quitting, knowing that I believe something's going to happen. Now, I don't advise people to quit.
Don't do that without a plan.
Like I truly felt peace in my spirit about the move I was making, and that's where I honestly feel like it's critical to be in tune with what the Lord is saying to you, especially with every decision in your life, but the critical ones for sure. And then literally a week later, I get a call from Stryker saying, hey, we love you. We would love to have you join the organization and move to South Florida. And that's what got me to Stryker back in 2005.
Wow. Okay. And you were, in that healthcare space for how many years now?
A decade.
A decade.
Wow. A decade, yeah.
Okay. And how was the transition from healthcare to where you are right now? Was that something that was planned or intended, or did it happen, by God again?
Long story short, it was by God. I truly believe God put destiny helpers in your way.
Yes, sir.
So one of the phrases that I really don't like, I understand the intentionality behind it. Many times I hear self-made something.
Yes.
I just don't believe anybody is truly self-made, because there's going to be the one person that gave you something that allowed you to get to the next thing.
Exactly.
So I have a hard time with that. But in my case, to answer your question specifically, there's the person I worked with, who I'm great friends with till today, who was overseeing all of HR at the time for our endoscopy division. And he basically took a job, left, went to another organization. I always had this thing that I potentially wanted to get into HR. But I was just like, man, I don't know if the timing's right. Number one. Number two, the roles that were always open was going to require me to move from Texas to California. And I was just like, no.
You weren't doing that.
Needless to say, long story short, an opportunity came up, had some conversations, did some interviews, decided to take a step of faith again when the opportunity arose to jump from Stryker and being in the medical space to moving to a company that a lot of people know today called Tesla.
Okay.
And that's what jump-started my career in HR.
Okay. Now talk to me about, the transition. You from Atlanta, okay? Yeah. You go from Atlanta to Florida to Texas, and now you're working in literally Silicon Valley, right? Yeah. How was that for a person of faith? I mean, I ain't never been to California as far as Silicon Valley is concerned, but what we see on TV, it seems, there are not a lot of people who are pushing faith and God and Christ in there. How was that for you? And, did you feel like you were comfortable sharing your faith and living, in other words, being in the world but not of the world?
Yeah. It's it was a what's the word I'm looking for?
Just another day.
Yeah.
Another job.
I mean that's the way to describe it. It was a non-event.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is that I get the stigma, or the brand, the brand that the West Coast has, specifically California,
right?
Regardless of what side of politics you're on, and then some of the legislation that goes through. So I can kind of get that spiritually, folks will just be like, hey man, from a faith perspective, it seems like they fight a lot of things that are advocating the word of God. And in a lot of cases, it is true. But the reality of it is, man, everywhere you live, either it's Atlanta or it's Texas, you can see people that talk the word but don't do it. People that don't talk the word, don't believe it, that are atheists. So you see it every single day.
Right.
So for me, the transition wasn't like, oh my God, this is like really hard to deal with. It was just like, hey man, we're dealing with people. I understand what grace has done for me.
Absolutely.
The same people that may be struggling with their faith or may not believe was not necessarily where I was at because I grew up in a Christian home. So I was exposed to it, but I knew through my journey until I personally accepted Christ, I had a lot of things that I may have practiced or said one thing verbally, but what I practiced and what I truly believed in my heart was another.
It's different.
Until I truly said, hey God, you know what, I surrender and give it all. So I think there's always a measure of grace as a Christian that you need to be thoughtful about. And so the location change didn't really affect me. There's always going to be certain things that you got to navigate across, different regional lines or state lines. That's just different to be able to connect. But I'm big on like, how do you find ways to meet people at where they're at? And so it was cool. And then mind you, when I was a Stryker, if you go back, that 8 or 9 years, I was traveling all over the place.
Right.
And so I spent a lot of time in New York, a lot of time on the West Coast. And so it wasn't much of a culture shock for me because I had been in all those locations before.
Makes sense. So God literally prepared you for this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's such a blessing, man. That's such a blessing. Now, being in HR, you're dealing with people, right?
Yeah.
You're dealing with people that have different backgrounds, different belief systems, and all that, and you have to manage that. What would you say some of the challenges you've had, and how has your faith helped you through those challenges? So specifically,
in the role of HR, it's not a therapist role,
right?
But in a lot of cases, you are a therapist.
You are a therapist, right?
Because a lot of the challenges that people have professionally in terms of being able to accomplish their job or execute on the roles or responsibilities that they have, there's always things that are bleeding from what's going on internally or in their personal lives.
Right.
And having to figure out how to balance that has always been a challenge in corporate America. And until 2021 or 2020, I'll say, post-pandemic, I don't think the world really allowed it to be open to say like, you know what? The two have to coexist. I think there was always this thing of like, hey, you got to compartmentalize your personal life, and you have to compartmentalize your professional life. Now there's a lot more grace, I think, in like trying to mend the two. Even though there's some people that are trying to we know some organizations that are trying to kind of push it back. But either way, I think the reason why I say that is that you get an opportunity to really hear the vulnerability in folks. And it's challenging.
Yes.
It's challenging. In an 8 to 10 hour day, when you get that dumped on you over and over again, you find yourself pouring into people a lot. And so it's critical for you to get filled back up. So spending time in the Word, spending time with people that can say like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to pull anything from you. I just want to dump and invest things into you. And so that's critical. And so I think through those times and through the years, you start to realize it's like, hey, you know what? Let me make sure that I'm surrounding myself around individuals that I can learn from, that are going to challenge me, that are going to push on some of the ideas and some of the thoughts and some of the opinions that I have to help me grow spiritually in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And so the role has been great because it's a giving role. And I think in that role, you know, if you want to tie it back to your faith, and everything obviously should tie back to your faith, you know, the servitude that comes along with it is absolutely amazing.
It's critical.
And so I appreciate it. But the humanity side of it is like, hey, you know what? There's an element of just being tired, right?
Sir.
And exhausted that comes along with it. And you just have to figure out ways to recharge.
Beautiful, beautiful. So for the little girl in Atlanta or little boy in Akwa Ibom in Nigeria who's watching this today and is struggling with making that decision, right? You had Major League Baseball, you had corporate America, and you had this job, and you literally took a step of faith, right? We got Nigerian parents, you know what I'm saying? They're pushing you to be a doctor, engineer, all this other stuff. Like you're saying, I want to play baseball, right? For somebody who's dealing with a struggle now and trying to make that decision, thinking which way do I go, left or right? What advice would you give them as far as faith and praying and hearing from God? And you said you felt the peace about it.
Yeah.
And that's something that people don't understand. When you feel, you know, that you've heard from God and the decision you're making might not make sense to anybody, you know what I'm saying? How would you help somebody out there?
Yeah, I think one of the best skills or traits or attributes a person can have is self-awareness. And the reason why I say that is like, it's like the 5 talents. Like you got to know the talent you have. You can't be trying to operate at a 5-level talent and you have a one level gift.
True that.
Right. And so the thing that helped me is that I realized is like, hey, I had a gift to play baseball. Obviously, the gift I had was great and it was given to God. There's things that I probably could have done to optimize the gift to possibly go to a higher level. But at the end of the day, it didn't work out. So I understood what the ceiling was. And I was able to accept that and say, okay, God, thank you for where it brought me. Thank you for what it allowed my parents not to have to pay because of scholarships and all the other things that come along with that. But now the thing that you have before me next, that you put a passion in me, let me go explore it. So I think the advice I would give to the individuals in the scenarios that you laid out is that first understand, like, what's that thing that's stirring you up? And I think in this day and age, obviously it's different than when I grew up. I mean, I'm not super old. I'm only a little over 40. But the reality of it is, it's a different world.
It is.
Like we had pressures, but we didn't have pressures bombarding us
24/7
the way it was.
Social media and all that.
Exactly.
We had no Facebook and all that back then, right?
Exactly. And so this whole thing about identity is probably a bigger conversation today than it's ever been. And I've been pushing to write this book and I haven't wrote it yet, but I want to call it Identity Christ Is. And it's like the identity Christ is the identity, you know, but it's also a crisis, you know, and so there's a play on that because I honestly believe is that if you don't really know like who you are, you're going to start chasing different things. And then you'll feel like, hey, I want to do this and I want to go into info technology. Well, then I want to be a doctor. And before you know it, you're 45 years old. And you're like, where has time gone? So I think the number one thing is self-identification, understanding like what the gifts are, what the passions are, and don't overcomplicate it. Like there's certain things that you just naturally gravitate to. There's things that you get super excited about when you do it. Like, you know what? That excitement doesn't just come from anywhere. It came from God. So say, oh God, with this thing that I love to do that's baking, like where do you want me to actually leverage it? You know? So those are the type of things that I think are very practical that you could put into play. And then the second aspect of it is when you really don't know, you say, hey God, man, I'm struggling with this. What do I do? And that's how my prayer life sounds. I have times where I'm obviously on my knees and I'm like, hey God, you know, here's what I got going on. But man, 90% of my prayer life is I'm just walking and talking with God. Because the one thing for me is like, God, I know that you are God, you're King, you're Lord of Lords, you're King of Kings, and your sovereignty reigns. And so I never want to get to a place where I lose sight of how big God is.
That's big.
But also God is so amazing that he's also a friend. And that's how I leverage the conversations we have. And so I have multiple stories I can share with you where I'm just like, hey God, I know I don't need this, but I really want it so bad, and I really like it. And we're talking this dialogue. It's in those moments,
relationship, right?
That's where the relationship is really grown. That's where it's fostered. That's where I've really heard God talk to me like, yeah, you do want it, but you don't need it. Or if you're gonna get it, like how are you gonna use it to glorify me? Right. It's just actually it's a more of a fleshy desire.
Absolutely.
But it's so cool to be very vulnerable and honest to a God who already knows what your heart is thinking. And so the second part of that is just be honest, be open to God about the things that you know, the things that you don't know, because he already has the answer. And then the third part about it is just do it. I'm still a little slogan from Nike, man, but you know, sometimes it gets me in trouble. My wife could tell you that, but I'm an activator. You know, I like to dream, and I like to say like, hey, if you don't try it,
You don't never gonna know.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. If
you know,
if you don't take that leap.
Exactly.
Right?
So I have a very, very high risk tolerance when it comes to certain things. But where there's life, there's hope, and there's an opportunity. And so I think the third part about it is like when you do feel that calling, go jump. Go try it out. And the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work out.
Exactly.
And you learn the lessons. You learn the lessons, and you keep on rolling.
Beautiful, man. That's really, really inspirational. You know, you mentioned something a while ago that I too really hate. It's this idea of individualism and self-made. I don't believe in that. The Bible talks about, you know, us wanting to live in family and live in fellowship, right? Not in isolation. And you know, when that comes up, I like to bring up mentorship. You are where you are today. You're very successful, and you've mentioned people that have kind of helped you along the way. Who are some specific mentors that have helped influence you, and how would you say them?
Yeah, you want names, or you just want
both, man? Yes, give us some names.
Well, the biggest mentor, and this is gonna sound overly spiritual, is obviously Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And the older I get, I'm just kind of like, man, you know, years ago they had the whole bracelet, "What would Jesus do?" The whole thing, which was cool. But I think it actually is way more applicable now that I'm older. It's like, man, you know what? That person cut me off, man. What would Jesus really do? I know what Udeme would do. You know, so I try to start to say like, hey, in these situations, Lord, what do you really want me to do? Because I'm always on stage. Like I tell my kids this. You don't know who's watching. You're always on stage. Always. Someone is always watching. You know it's the audience of one, and you know God's always watching you. But the next level down, there's someone watching you. And the one thing you do or say or how you respond or how you look or how you snarl or how you roll your eyes can literally put a little cheek in your ministry. Right. And so I always try to think about that. I'm definitely not perfect at it, and I slip up a lot. But I'm always mindful of like, all right, like, Lord, how would you want to operate this? Because when you read through the word, as I know you know, yes, sir, you start to realize like, hey, nothing new under the sun. Like Jesus experienced a lot of this. And so I try to really break it down to myself to be like, hey, this is practical stuff. This is not high level theology. Yes, like Jesus faced these things. And so how do I apply that to my experiences and how do I respond? The second part is my dad. I mean, my dad has been, my dad's been amazing. I thank God he's still with us. And he's been an unbelievable father, unbelievable husband, unbelievable friend, unbelievable man of God in terms of like his commitment just to the gospel of Jesus Christ and making sure people hear it in the different capacities in which he served and building God's kingdom. And so that's been amazing, and that's been an unbelievable inspiration. Then I have a multitude of folks in terms of like corporation wise. Like I got folks I can name, people like Mark Limpscomb, who's done a lot of different things in corporate America. I've worked with him. He was actually one of the first people that interviewed me back in my days as Striker and was an integral part of my life corporately. I got folks like Frank Gray III, who's an unbelievable CEO of a company called New Line that's exploding as an organization. You got people like Brian Applegate. You got Steve Colburn. I mean, I have some. There's just a multitude of folks that I can't even name. I hate even naming names because I know I've let some people out, and some folks see this and come out. Really, Udeme?
It ain't personal. It ain't personal.
Yeah, but it's just when I think about it, I name names based on like various stages where I was in my life. If I look at my first 10 years, my second 10 years, my third 10 years, and now the fourth floor that I'm on, like this fourth 10 years right now. Like I think about like, hey, what are some folks career-wise that are really impactful? And the folks I name, man, on like all those stages, along with a multitude of others, have really been inspirational. I mean, the vulnerability some of these folks have shared in terms of like, hey, here's what I've done. You know what? In terms of like helping build my portfolio financially. Or you know what? I see the talent, even though you don't have the skill set. Let's put you in the role and let's see what happens. Like it's just unbelievable. Until today, you know, folks are still taking bets on me, and it's it almost makes me emotional thinking about it because it's unbelievable to realize that, like, what did you see in me that allowed you to take the risk, and put your name on the line
but that's God.
For a boy
that's
from the choir boom. And that's when I see God's hand all over it. So it always points right back to him.
Amen to that, man. Amen to that. We want to say a big thank you for letting us come to your spot today.
Absolutely.
You know, for people out there who are, you know, who have heard you and just inspired by what you have to say. Is there a way they can reach you? Are you on social media? I don't know if you're a social media guy. I mean,
I'm on social media, but the picture that's on there on Facebook,
so
the picture of me
being, talking about Facebook.
Yeah,
he's there on Facebook though.
I
think it on TikTok or stuff.
No, you're not gonna find me on TikTok. And if you find my name on TikTok, it's not me.
It ain't you.
Even though there are a couple of Udemes or out there.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I got a Facebook. it's not even a picture of me. It's, I'm in actually the Cincinnati Reds clubhouse.
Oh, wow.
Because a good friend of mine used to play with them.
Like
and we were out there. So you can find me there.
Yep.
If you do send me a message, I've done a little bit better. I'm not responding in 2-year time frames anymore. I'm actually responding like in 2-month time frames.
Wow, 2 months.
So I'm working on it. I'm just not a social media guy.
Amen.
But you can find me there. The best thing is though LinkedIn. Like if you hit me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. I normally try to respond. I respond to a lot of people, and obviously being an HR profession, everyone thinks you're in talent acquisition. So people are like, hey, I want a job. It's like kind of not what I do. But let's talk about like, you know. So I try to find ways to hopefully drop a nugget or some level of inspiration. So if people have any questions, they can ping me there. I also understand that doing this type of platform provides some level of exposure where people may reach out, and so I'm willing to make sure that I make that sacrifice and make the time to connect with folks. That's what it's all about. We're built to. We were created, I should say, to build community and build connection. And so if you want to find me, you know where to find me. And if you can't hit me, hit him, and then he'll hit me.
I know where to find that. God bless. We want to say a big thank you
man,
today, man.
appreciate it, my brother. All day.
We'll see you guys later, and don't forget to subscribe.
Appreciate you guys.